They say that when you spit in the air, it falls back on your face. My son Diego's spit flew straight from his mouth right onto my face, in front of everyone in that crowded terminal at JFK Airport. But what he didn't know was that I already had a parachute ready for when he would fall from 30,000 feet. My name is Nelson Taylor. I'm 68 years old, retired from construction. I worked 40 years as a foreman in New York City. One of those guys who wakes up at 4 a.m. and only comes home after the sun sets. I live in a modest apartment in Queens that I bought with great sacrifice, payment by payment. My wife, Mary Jane, passed away 5 years ago from cancer. Since then, I've lived alone, but I always kept in touch with my only son, Diego, 41, married to Juliana, at least until that day at the airport. If you're enjoying this story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Leave in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Every day there's a new story here on this channel, and this one, my friend, will show you how a father can tolerate many things, but disrespect isn't one of them. I've always been a simple man, but I never let my son go without. I worked on more than 100 construction sites across the city, often doing overtime, double shifts, working on holidays, all to give Diego a better life than the one I had. I paid for private school English lessons, business administration degree, all the best. And when he had everything, when he no longer needed his father, that's when he showed that money buys comfort, but it doesn't buy character. I'll never forget the look in his eyes when he spat in my face, a mixture of contempt and superiority I never thought I'd see on the face of the boy I carried in my arms. But this story isn't just about ingratitude. It's about how I, an old man he thought was worthless, taught him the biggest lesson of his life. And it all started when I decided to give him and Juliana an anniversary gift. I was born in rural Pennsylvania, in a small town called Pine Grove, where my father had a small farm, hard life, you know, waking up with the roosters, tending the fields, caring for animals, that endless country work. My father was a strict man, one of those who wouldn't tolerate disrespect. A man who doesn't honor his father honors nothing in life, he used to say, and I carried that with me. At 17, I left home with his blessing and came to New York to try my luck. I started as a construction laborer, sleeping in worksite housing. The sound of jackhammers and the smell of cement became my routine, but I had willpower. I worked my way up, assistant, bricklayer, supervisor, and finally foreman. I learned everything through practice, with calloused hands and sweat on my brow. My knees barely bend anymore from climbing so many scaffolds. I worked on all kinds of projects, residential, commercial, industrial. I helped build mansions in the Hamptons that are worth millions today. Some projects lasted 2-3 years, and I was there every day leading teams of 50 men. My notebook was sacred. I wrote down everything, material quantities, deadlines, who worked hard, who slacked off. The engineers trusted me because they knew with me there would be no mistakes. It was on one of these sites that I met Mary Jane, my late wife. She worked at the canteen that provided meals for the workers. A warrior woman, widowed, had already faced many hardships in life. We started talking during lunch breaks, and I soon saw she was a serious, hard-working woman. 6 months later, we were married, and a year after that, Diego was born, our only child. Ah, Diego. How that boy was the joy of our home. Smart, intelligent, always got the best grades. Mary Jane and I did everything to give him what we never had. I remember once when he wanted an imported video game, something very expensive at the time. I worked overtime for 3 months to buy it. His joy was worth every drop of sweat. When he got into NYU's business school, I cried in secret. A construction worker's son, studying at one of the best universities in New York. I felt like the most accomplished man in the world. I worked even harder to pay that heavy tuition, but I never complained. Mary Jane also took extra cleaning jobs on weekends, all for our boy. It was at college that he met Juliana. Beautiful, educated girl from a wealthier family than ours. At first, I confess I was afraid she might look down on us, but I was wrong. Juliana always treated us with respect. She called Mary Jane Mom, came for Sunday lunch every week. I liked her from the start and always thought she was a good match for my son. After Diego graduated, he got a job at a multinational. Soon he was earning good money, buying new cars, designer clothes. Juliana also worked at a big marketing company. They made a beautiful couple. When they announced they were getting married, I spared no expense. I sold a plot of land I had kept as a reserve and helped pay for the reception. Beautiful ceremony in Long Island. Very elegant. Mary Jane was so proud she couldn't stop crying with emotion. Over time, I noticed changes in Diego. He increasingly valued material things, status, appearances. He started frequenting expensive places, hanging out with rich people, talking about international trips and fancy restaurants. Nothing against that. Of course, he had earned his place. The problem was that he grew distant from us, as if he were ashamed of his humble origins. When Mary Jane got sick, he showed up less and less, always with excuses about meetings, business trips, unavoidable commitments. I took care of her alone in those final months. Pancreatic cancer, quick and cruel. In her last days, she called for her son, wanted to see him. He showed up twice, stayed half an hour and left in a hurry. On the day of her funeral, he was more concerned with a work call than saying goodbye to his mother. After I became a widower, I tried to keep in touch. I would go to their house occasionally, invite them for Sunday lunch like in the old days, but there was always an excuse. When I did visit, I noticed he grew impatient, looking at his watch as if I were a nuisance. Juliana, on the other hand, tried to make up for it, always attentive, asking about my health if I was eating properly. It was on one of those Sundays, 2 years ago, that I accidentally discovered Diego's affair. I arrived at their house unannounced, as I used to do. Juliana wasn't there. She had gone to visit her parents. Diego was in his office talking on the phone, didn't see me come in. I overheard unintentionally. "I miss you too, Karina. Monday we'll meet at the usual place." "No, Juliana doesn't suspect anything." I left without making a sound, heartbroken. Not because of the affair itself, everyone knows their own life, but because of the betrayal to Juliana, who had always been a good wife and daughter-in-law. I was unsure whether I should tell her or not. I decided to observe more, to be sure before doing anything. In the following months, I began to pay attention. I discovered that this Karina was a flight attendant for American Airlines, pretty, younger than Diego. One day I followed my son to an apartment in Brooklyn. I saw them kissing at the entrance. I took photos with my cell phone, not out of voyeurism, but because something told me they might be useful someday. I managed to find her cell number, monitored conversations, took more photos, recorded videos, gathered credit card statements showing expensive gifts. I kept all this to myself, without showing anyone. It wasn't my business, I thought. You reap what you sow. But then came their 15th wedding anniversary. Diego and Juliana were celebrating 15 years of marriage, and I wanted to do something special. Despite everything, he was still my son, blood of my blood. And Juliana had always been a good daughter-in-law. She deserved a nice celebration. That's when I had the idea. A trip to Cancun, Mexico, a beautiful place they always said they wanted to visit. In my simple life, I had never traveled abroad. The farthest I'd gone was to Florida with Mary Jane years ago, but I always saved a little from my pension, plus I had sold my late mother's apartment that I'd inherited. I decided to use part of these savings for this gift. I bought 3 tickets, one for me, one for Diego, and one for Juliana, all online with help from the travel agency lady. I also booked an all-inclusive resort. It would be expensive, but worth it. When I told them about the gift, Juliana was touched, hugged me, cried. "Diego?" Well, Diego thanked me, but I noticed he wasn't very excited about the idea of his father going along, though he swallowed his pride because Juliana was radiant with the idea. I scheduled everything for 3 months later, in July. A good time to travel to the Caribbean, according to the travel agent. In the months leading up to the trip, I noticed that Diego continued his meetings with Karina. My investigations showed that every Monday and Thursday, between 2 and 5 p.m., they met at the Brooklyn apartment. I thought several times about telling Juliana, but something told me to wait. Maybe the trip would bring the couple closer. Maybe he would stop this madness. The big day arrived. Our flight would leave JFK at 11:30 a.m. I called an Uber at 7 in the morning. I've always been one of those who prefers to arrive well in advance, especially at airports. I took a small suitcase, just the essentials. When I got to the airport, I was already anxious. First international trip, first passport, everything new for this old man. I met Diego and Juliana in Terminal 3 as planned. Juliana gave me a strong hug, excited about the trip. Diego merely waved from a distance, all rushed, complaining that I had scheduled too early and that we would have to wait for hours. I ignored the rudeness. We were going to Cancun. It must be his nerves. We went to the airline counter to check in. The line was long, typical for peak season. While we waited, Juliana excitedly commented about the tours we could take, the beaches she wanted to visit, the restaurants. Diego impatiently checked his phone, probably texting her. When it was finally our turn at the counter, I handed over our 3 passports and the printed tickets. The attendant, very polite, started processing our check-in. That's when she said, "Mr. Taylor, you're in economy class. The couple is in business class." I was confused. I was sure I had bought 3 tickets in the same class. Before I could say anything, Diego grabbed the tickets from the attendant's hand and started laughing. "Ha! Your ticket is economy. Ours is business, you inferior old man." Those words hit me like a brick to the head. The line behind us stopped, everyone staring. I felt my face burn with shame. Diego continued, "What did you expect? That we would put up with you sitting next to us during the entire flight, telling your construction worker stories, showing your calloused hands to the flight attendants? You stay in the back with the riffraff, where you belong." The check-in attendant went pale, not knowing what to do. Juliana pulled Diego's arm, embarrassed. "Diego, stop it. How embarrassing, he's your father." "Shut up, Juliana, he deserves it. He thinks that just because he paid for this trip, he can act all high and mighty. Go sit in the back with the poor people, where you should be." That's when it happened. In a quick movement, Diego leaned over the counter and spat in my face, right in front of everyone. I felt the spit run down my cheek, warm, viscous. The entire terminal stopped. Some people gasped in shock. A security guard began to approach. The attendant called her supervisor on the phone. Juliana covered her face with her hands in shock, and I stood still, calm. I took a handkerchief from my pocket, one of those cloth ones that men my age always carry, and slowly wiped my face. I looked into my son's eyes, which still had that contemptuous smile, and said softly, "That's okay, son. I'll see you in Cancun." Diego laughed even louder. "If you survive economy class." "Come on, Juliana, let's go to the VIP lounge while this old man waits with the commoners." Juliana, completely embarrassed, murmured, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Taylor," and was dragged away by her husband. The supervisor arrived and asked if everything was okay, if I wanted to file a complaint. I said no, everything was fine, it was just a family disagreement. I finished my check-in alone. The attendant, feeling sorry for me, gave me a window seat in economy. I went through security and straight to the boarding area. I sat on a bench away from the crowd and sat there thinking. It was at that moment, looking at the movement in the airport, that I made my decision. That spit wasn't just spit. It was years of accumulated contempt. It was the way he treated his mother on her deathbed. It was all the times he made me feel inferior for being a manual laborer. It was the betrayal of Juliana, who didn't deserve this. It was all together, exploding in my face in the form of saliva. I took my phone out of my pocket and opened the folder where I kept all the evidence of Diego's affair with Karina. I checked the time of our flight, American Airlines 1458, bound for Dallas with a connection to Cancun. I opened the airline app and checked the crew, and there she was, Karina Smith, flight attendant. That's when it all made sense. Diego wasn't eager for the trip. He was eager to meet his mistress on the plane. I imagine it was his idea to change my ticket to economy class. That way he would be away from his father's eyes while flirting with the flight attendant during the flight. What he didn't know was that I knew Karina's face. I had her photos. I had known about the affair for 2 years, knew about the apartment, knew about the messages. I had saved it all, waiting for the right moment. And that spit was the last straw. I created a temporary email right there on the airport bench. I selected the best evidence, 23 photos of him kissing her in various places. screenshots of racy conversations I managed to capture as reflections when he left his phone unlocked, credit card statements showing expensive gifts for her, and the video entering a motel that I had managed to record once when I followed them. Recipient, Juliana. Subject, your husband is cheating on you. In the body of the email I wrote, Juliana, your husband is having an affair with Karina Smith, American Airlines flight attendant, flight 1458. It's been going on for 2 years. Apartment in Brooklyn, Mondays and Thursdays, 2 to 5 p.m., evidence attached. I attached everything. My finger hovered over the send button for a few seconds. I thought about Juliana, who didn't deserve to find out this way. I thought about Diego, my only son. I thought about my late wife, who gave her life to raise that boy. Then I remembered the spit on my face. Inferior old man, he had called me. I sent the email. Our boarding call was announced. I grabbed my carry-on and got in line. I spotted Diego and Juliana coming from the VIP lounge. He was laughing loudly, she was smiling awkwardly. They boarded first, of course. After all, they were in business class. I waited my turn and entered the plane. Economy class was cramped, yes. But I, who grew up sleeping in a room with 3 other siblings, who spent years in construction site housing, didn't mind the lack of space. I sat in my window seat, fastened my seatbelt, and took a deep breath. The plane began to taxi. It was about 20 minutes after takeoff, when we reached cruising altitude and the seatbelt sign turned off, that I heard the first scream, loud, shrill, coming from business class. Diego, you son of a bitch, you've been cheating on me for 2 years. Juliana had seen the email. Juliana had opened the files. Juliana had discovered everything. The commotion started. A flight attendant ran to the front of the plane. Ma'am, please calm down. We're in mid-flight. But there was no calming a woman who had just discovered a 2-year betrayal. The entire plane could hear. Look at these photos. Look at this, you bastard, with this slut. Diego tried to deny it from what I could hear. He said it was a setup, that it was persecution, that it was jealousy from someone at work, classic excuses from an unfaithful man caught red-handed. Here's your credit card statement, the gifts you bought her. Apartment in Brooklyn every Monday and Thursday. Tell me it's a lie. Even from economy class you could hear the commotion. Passengers began taking out their phones to record. Flight attendants tried to contain the situation. That's when I heard Juliana ask, Karina Smith, who is Karina Smith? And I heard one of the flight attendants trying to calm her, saying something like, please, ma'am, don't shout the name of our crew member. That was the trigger. Juliana understood everything. She's here, she's on this flight, where's that whore? What happened next was fast. From my window in economy class, I saw Juliana get up furiously, pushing the flight attendants and heading toward the galley where the flight attendants were preparing the in-flight service. I saw when she identified Karina, probably from the photo in the email. I saw when Juliana flew at her. The scream was frightening. Juliana pulled Karina's hair hard, knocking over the tray she was holding. Drinks, glasses, and snacks flew in all directions. Diego tried to separate them. Other passengers stood up to see, some to help, others just to record. The captain made an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, due to a disturbance on board, we will be forced to make an unscheduled landing at the nearest airport. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. We landed in Nashville. When the plane door opened, there were 4 air marshals waiting. Diego, Juliana, and Karina were escorted off the plane. I heard one of the officers explain that there would be an interrogation, that a fight on a plane was a serious matter, that it could even lead to arrest. The other passengers were outraged by the delay, complaining loudly. The crew announced that the flight would continue to Cancun as soon as possible, but that the 3 involved in the disturbance would be detained in Nashville to provide clarification. I remained quiet in my corner. When the flight was authorized to continue, I traveled alone in peace. Anyone who saw that gray-haired gentleman looking out the window would never imagine that he had just detonated a bomb that exploded at 30,000 feet. The rest of the flight to Cancun was peaceful. No Diego, no Juliana, no drama. When we arrived, I passed through Mexican immigration, got my suitcase, and headed to the resort where we had reservations. I explained at the reception that it would only be me, that my son and daughter-in-law had an emergency. The attendant, very polite, said there was no problem, that the room was paid for, and that I could make myself comfortable. It was a beautiful place, facing the Caribbean Sea, turquoise blue water like I'd only seen in magazines. I sat on the balcony of my room, looking at the horizon, and felt a strange peace, as if a weight of years had been lifted from my shoulders. The weight of keeping a secret that wasn't mine, the weight of swallowing disrespect. That night I received the first call. It was Diego. He was furious. "Dad, you destroyed my life. It was you, wasn't it? It was you who sent that email." I was silent for a few seconds before answering. "No, Diego, you destroyed your life when you spat in my face." I recognized the photos. They could only have been taken by you. You followed us, you spied on us. What kind of father does that? What kind of son spits on his father? What kind of husband cheats on his wife for 2 years? What kind of man humiliates the one who gave his life for him? Diego began to cry on the other end of the line, a cry of anger, of frustration. The air marshal almost arrested us. We're stuck in Nashville. Juliana wants a divorce. Karina has been suspended. All because of you. No, son. All because of you. Your choices, your consequences. What? You wanted to get revenge because I put you in economy class. It was just a joke. That's when I explained. Diego, I knew about your affair for 2 years, since your mother died, and you didn't even have time to mourn properly because you were too busy with your mistress. I never said anything out of respect for Juliana, who didn't deserve to find out this way, but you spat in my face, in public, in front of everyone, lost my respect. I was joking, Dad. Come on, you couldn't take it. Spitting isn't a joke, son. Spitting is humiliation. It's what you do to someone you despise. You despised me in front of everyone, and now everyone is seeing who you really are. I hung up the phone and kept looking at the sea. What Diego didn't know was that I had more than those photos and messages. I had the trump card that I never needed to use, the testimony of someone who could finish him off for good. Rosa, the cleaning lady at the Brooklyn building. Rosa had worked in that building for 15 years. She knew all the residents, all the secrets. When I started investigating Diego's case, she recognized me one day when I was observing the building. "You're the father of the man who comes here with that American Airlines girl, aren't you? I know you from the photo he carries in his wallet." I was surprised. I didn't know Diego carried a photo of me. Rosa continued. "Your son is very polite to me, always greets me, but what he's doing isn't right. His wife seems like such a nice girl." Rosa became my unwitting ally. She was the one who told me the exact days and times they met. She was the one who warned me when they started using a motel, when the building manager almost caught them. Rosa was my eyes when I couldn't be there. The day after Diego's call, I received a message from Rosa. "Mr. Taylor, the lady from the airport came here to the building. She tried to force her way into the other woman's apartment. There was a commotion. They called the police. She had a paper in her hand. It looked like the lease contract with your son's name. Juliana had gone after more evidence. She had discovered the apartment. She was furious, determined to expose everything. I decided to call her. She answered on the first ring. "Mr. Taylor, are you okay?" "I am, Juliana, and how are you?" She started crying, devastated. "How could he? 2 years, Mr. Taylor, 2 years with some tramp on our anniversary, and then he humiliated you like that at the airport." "Juliana, I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this." "It was you who sent that email, wasn't it? I recognized your way of writing, so direct, so straightforward." I didn't deny it. There was no reason to lie anymore. "Why didn't you tell me sooner, Mr. Taylor? Why did you wait so long?" "Because it wasn't my business, Juliana. Every couple has their problems, their secrets. I didn't want to interfere, but when he spat at me, when he humiliated me that way, you did the right thing. He deserved it, and I needed to know. Thank you." The next day I received another call. It was Diego's boss from the multinational where he worked. "Mr. Taylor, this is Michael Almeida, HR director at the company where your son works. Or worked, I should say. Did something happen? You don't know? The video of the fight on the plane went viral. It's on all news portals, social media, everywhere. Your son appears clearly, as well as the situation. Our company has a very strict policy on inappropriate behavior in public. Unfortunately, we had to let him go. Diego had been fired. The video of the scandal on the plane had reached his company. His reputation was ruined. That same afternoon, Juliana called me again. She was calmer, more determined. "Mr. Taylor, I've already filed for divorce, contentious with all the evidence. I want half of everything plus the house. He's going to pay for every minute he made a fool of me." "You have every right, Juliana." That Karina woman was also fired from the airline. Apparently it's against the rules to get involved with passengers, and she knew he was married. I want to sue both of them for emotional damages. Diego had lost everything. His marriage, his job, his mistress, his dignity, and all because of a spit. I spent the rest of the week in Cancun alone. I enjoyed it as best I could, but I confess the whole situation left me with a bitter taste in my mouth. After all, despite everything, he was my son, flesh of my flesh. I took no pleasure in his suffering, but I knew that lesson was necessary. Sometimes life teaches harshly. When I returned to New York, Diego was waiting for me in the airport terminal. He looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, unshaven. As soon as he saw me, he came toward me. "Dad, you ruined me." "No, Diego. You spat at me." "It was a joke." "Spitting isn't a joke, it's humiliation." He tried to argue, but he had no more strength. He was defeated. I asked where he was living. "With Juliana's mother, can you believe it? She's letting me stay in the back room until I get myself together. She says that despite everything, I'm the father of the grandchildren she wants to have, that's the only reason. And Karina disappeared, blocked my number. Seems she's found others. A pilot, I think. She didn't want anything to do with me when she found out I lost my job. At that moment I felt sorry for my son. He had thrown away everything good in his life because of an adventure, a meaningless affair. He had lost the wife who loved him, the job that supported him, and the respect of the father who always supported him. "Come on, son. Let's go home. You can stay with me while you reorganize yourself." Diego looked at me surprised. "After everything I did, you're still helping me? I'm your father. I can teach you a hard lesson, but I'll never abandon you." That's when he broke down. He cried like he hadn't since he was a child, right in the middle of the airport terminal, the same place where days before he had humiliated me. "Forgive me, Dad. Please, forgive me." I hugged my son, but I knew forgiveness wouldn't erase the consequences. He would have to rebuild his life little by little with humility. He would have to regain his space, his respect. "Let's go home, son. We have a lot to talk about." On the way, I explained to him how I had discovered the affair, how I had gathered the evidence, how I had met Rosa. "So you knew everything for 2 years and never said anything?" "It wasn't my role to interfere in your life, Diego, until the moment you decided to humiliate me." Diego was silent, reflecting. "Juliana called me yesterday," he finally said. "She said the divorce will be finalized soon, that she wants the house and half of everything, that she's going to sue me for emotional damages. And what are you going to do? Give her everything she asks for. I messed up, Dad. I messed up badly with her and with you." When we arrived at my apartment in Queens, Diego looked around nostalgically. "How long has it been since I've been here, since Mom died?" 5 years, son. 5 years. That night, we sat on the balcony as we used to do when he was a boy. We drank coffee and talked a lot about life, about choices, about consequences, about respect, about humility. "You know, Dad, when I was sitting there at the police station in Nashville, with Juliana yelling at me and the officers asking questions, I remembered that phrase Grandpa always used to say." "Which one, son?" "That one about the spit that flies and comes back." I smiled. "My father, a simple man from the countryside but full of wisdom, always said, 'When you spit up in the air, it falls back on your face.'" Diego had learned the hard way that this was true. It's been 6 months since that episode at the airport. 6 months of rebuilding, of rethinking life, of learning lessons. Time is a good teacher, you know? It heals some wounds, but leaves scars so we don't forget what we learned. Diego stayed living with me for almost 2 months. At first it was difficult. We had to relearn how to live together. He, a 41-year-old man used to his space, his independence. Me, a 68-year-old man who had lived alone with my habits and routines for years. But gradually we adjusted, like gears in an old clock that start working again after a good cleaning. During this time, the divorce was finalized. Juliana didn't give in, and there was no reason she should. She got the house, half the investments, the newer car. Diego didn't contest anything. He accepted the terms, signed the papers, paid what he had to pay. It was the least he could do after 2 years of betrayal. He found a new job, of course not as good as the previous one. Nobody wants to hire an executive who became a meme on the internet for causing a scene on a flight. He started from scratch at a smaller company with a much more modest salary. He rented a small apartment near mine, nothing like the luxury home he shared with Juliana. He's learning to live with less, to value what's essential. As for Karina, I heard she also had difficulty finding a position with other airlines. The video of the incident circulated widely among industry professionals, but from what I was told, she eventually found a job with a cruise line company far from New York, far from Diego. Juliana moved on, went back to using her maiden name, changed her look, even changed jobs. I ran into her by chance at a mall about 3 weeks ago. She looked beautiful, seemed lighter. "Mr. Taylor, so good to see you." We hugged like old friends, went for coffee and talked. "How are things, Juliana?" "They're good, Mr. Taylor. You know that feeling of having a weight lifted off your shoulders? That's how I feel. I'm dating again. An architect I met at my new job, a serious, responsible man. I'm happy for you, my daughter. You deserve to be happy." She took my hand affectionately. "You know I'll always consider you my father-in-law, right? The father I wish my ex-husband had been." That moved me. In the midst of all that storm, I had built a true relationship with Juliana. "And how is Diego? Do you talk?" "Rarely, only when necessary because of some pending paperwork. He tries, you know, sends messages, asks how I am, if I need anything. But I keep my distance. Some breaches of trust can't be fixed." She was right. Some things, when broken, cannot be glued back together. They remain like those Japanese dishes repaired with gold, kintsugi, I think it's called, beautiful in their own way, but never the same. On my way home, I was thinking about how life comes full circle, how a moment of anger, a spit, can change the fate of so many people. Diego lost almost everything because of that gesture. He lost his wife, his job, his mistress, the respect of his colleagues. The only thing he didn't lose was his father, because I wouldn't allow that. No matter how serious a son's mistake, a real father never abandons him. But I also thought about my responsibility in all this. Should I have told Juliana as soon as I discovered the betrayal? Should I have confronted Diego earlier? Should I have let things take their natural course without interfering even after the humiliation? These are questions that don't have right answers. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual. We do what seems right at the time with the information we have, and then deal with the consequences. One thing I know, I never took pleasure in Diego's fall. When I saw him defeated, without a job, without a wife, without dignity, I didn't think, serves him right. I thought, what a waste. An intelligent man, with education, with opportunities I never had, throwing everything away out of pride, out of vanity, out of not knowing how to value what really matters. Just yesterday, Diego came to dinner at my house. He brought a bottle of wine, nothing expensive like he used to buy, but an honest wine, the kind you drink with pleasure and not for show. We talked a lot, as has been our custom these months. "Dad, do you think one day I'll be able to fix everything I broke?" "No, son. Some broken things can't be fixed. But you can build new things, different ones, perhaps even better ones." "Like what?" "Like self-respect, like humility, like gratitude for what you have instead of greed for what you don't have." He was silent, looking at the wine in his glass. "You know what hurts the most? It's not losing my job, or the money, or even Juliana, though I miss her every day. What hurts most is knowing that I humiliated you, Dad, that I spat in the face of the man who gave his life for me. Pain teaches, son. Humiliation teaches, failure teaches. If you learned, then nothing was in vain. Diego is rebuilding his life little by little, with humility, with hard work, with honesty. He's learning the value of hard-earned money, of respect earned day by day, not imposed by fear or position. He's learning to be a real man, not that spoiled brat who thought he could step on others. And I continue my simple life, my apartment in Queens, my modest retirement, my walks in the park on Sundays. I never needed much to be happy. A roof, food on the table, health and peace of mind, the rest is luxury. And luxury was never essential in my philosophy. Sometimes I think of Mary Jane, my late wife. What would she say about all this? I think she would be sad about her son's mistakes, but proud of how he's trying to get back on his feet. She was always a woman of faith, of forgiveness, of second chances. Perhaps it was she from up there who gave me the strength to welcome Diego when he needed it most, despite the hurt, despite the humiliation. One thing I learned from all this: there is no victory when it comes to family. Either everyone wins or everyone loses. When Diego fell, a part of me fell too. When he started to rise again, I began to feel lighter as well. That's how this blood tie works, this connection that no hurt can completely break. Last week, I received an unexpected call. It was Rosa, the cleaning lady from the Brooklyn building. "Mr. Taylor, I just wanted to know how you and your son are doing." "We're fine, Rosa, rebuilding little by little. You know that apartment where your son used to go with the woman? They rented it again to a young couple, newlyweds. They seem happy, in love. I hope they stay that way. I thought it was nice of her to call. It shows there are still people who care, who have empathy, who see beyond appearances." Rosa could have become just a piece in my plan to reveal the betrayal, but she became a friend, someone who roots for my family's well-being. Life continues its course, relentless. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. Soon it will be a year since that spit at the airport, that public humiliation, that revealing email, that scene at 30,000 feet. Today, looking back, I don't regret anything. I don't regret having kept the secret for 2 years, respecting their marriage. I don't regret having revealed everything after the humiliation. I don't regret having taken in my son when he needed it most. I've lived long enough to know that regret is a poison that corrodes the soul. We do what we have to do, then move on. As my father used to say, what's past is past. What matters is what you're going to do from now on. What am I going to do? Continue living with dignity, with honesty, and with simplicity. Continue being an example for my son, now more than ever. Continue treating people with respect, including those who disrespected me, because at the end of the day, that's what remains. Not material goods, not status, not power, but character, respect, integrity. Diego learned the hard way that business class doesn't mean business character, that money buys comfort, but not dignity, that spitting in your father's face can cost an entire empire. And I learned that sometimes you need to break in order to rebuild, that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, that loving a son doesn't mean being blind to his flaws, but seeing beyond them to the core, where that child you once cradled in your arms still exists. Thank you for listening this far. If you liked it, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. If you watched till the end, comment the word respect below. And don't forget to check out the other stories here on Grandpa's Voice channel. There are 2 on screen that you'll enjoy. A hug from this old man here.